Thank you, Kazi, and it's good to see you all here this morning. So first up, I wanted to just say a little bit about the changes in tax and transfer policy. Can we roll forward a slide, please? Oh, thank you. Okay, so of course the largest single item is the Stage 3 tax cuts, and Anthony Kostajak will speak about that in a moment. So the Stage 3 tax cuts reach people who are paying income tax, but there are people in the community who aren't, particularly retirees. And so the budget does a number of things for people who either aren't paying income tax or who are on, primarily reliant on government income support payments to help them with the cost of living. So over the last year or so, rents have risen strongly, and they continue to rise strongly as people's existing tenancy agreements expire and are rolled over. And so people's rental costs have been going up significantly faster than CPI. So for that reason, the Commonwealth has increased the maximum amount of Commonwealth rent assistance payable, and that's increased by 10% this year, and that's on top of a 15% rise in last year's budget. Commonwealth rent assistance is available to most rent recipients of income support payments who are in the private rental market. And at the top level, it pays about 75 cents in the dollar of rent above a threshold. PBS co-payments. There's a 1-year freeze on the maximum pharmaceutical benefit scheme patient co-payment for everyone with a Medicare card, which is basically most Australian citizens. And a 5-year freeze for pensioners and other concession card holders. Job seeker payment. Look, there had been a call to significantly increase job seeker payment across the board, and the government has not acted on that. But what it has done is to increase the job seeker payment for a certain group of people. So there's a higher rate available for people who are single and over the age of 55. And so some people who are under the age of 55 and single will be lifted onto that higher rate as well. And in addition, there are increases in the energy supplement available to people on income support payments. The deeming rate. So the deeming rate is the interest rate that people are assumed to earn on cash balances that they have, and that's particularly important for old age pensioners. And so the deeming rate is set with reference to the interest rate, and given the interest rates have gone up, there was a potential for the deeming rate to be increased, which would have said that old age pensioners were assumed to be getting more money in interest payments. So the government has frozen the deeming rate at the current level, which is which means that not as much is clawed back from old age pensioners particularly. And then with the substantial increases in wages in the childcare sector, that would have a potential sort of large flow-on effect to the fees paid by parents who place children in childcare. And the Commonwealth has committed to increase support to cover those additional costs coming from wage increases in that sector. Okay, so decarbonisation. So if, as I think, you think that Australia needs to transition to a low carbon economy, the question is how to do it at least cost. So in Australia, the most efficient measures have effectively been taken off the table. And this is because carbon reduction was sort of weaponised politically, and so it means that broad-based measures such as a broad-based emissions tax or emissions quotas, which are likely to be the lowest cost of means of delivering the transition, are off the table. So that instead governments turn to sort of second-best measures or worse. So a lot of these measures are off budget, but some are on the Commonwealth budget. So this budget announces $5 billion in new spending on net zero initiatives over the forward estimates. And $1.9 billion of this relates to expenditures under the Future Made in Australia program, which I'll say more about in a moment. And there's also 835 million for implementation of the new vehicle efficiency standard. The budget has also announced expanded support for the renewable hydrogen sector with a $1.3 billion expansion of Hydrogen Head Start. So Hydrogen Head Start is basically offering funding support in the near term to people who put up sort of ambitious, medium to large scale hydrogen production facilities using renewable energy. And South Australia is a potential contender for that money with the hydrogen electrolyser in the Upper Spencer Gulf. The government has also announced, and this is a longer term measure, the introduction of a hydrogen production tax incentive that will commence in 2026-27 and run for 12 years at a cost of $6.7 billion. There's not a lot of new announcements regarding electricity, but there were large electricity announcements in the last budget, including rewiring the nation, $20 billion to support transmission network expansions, and also the capacity investment scheme was announced. So the capacity investment scheme will provide guarantees to provide support to people who improve the stability of the electricity system and deal with the difficulties with renewable electricity, and particularly sort of guaranteeing minimum prices and, on the other hand, clawing back revenue when prices are high. Okay, so so the government has also made a significant industry policy announcement under the banner of Future Made in Australia, and it's announced $22.7 billion in spending over 10 years in support of this agenda. The key thing with industry policy is that it needs to be well targeted, and the budget has announced a test for projects to qualify for Future Made in Australia. So there are two streams of it. The first is a net zero transformation scheme. And so basically what this stream is saying is that as we transition to a low carbon future, at the moment there are challenges that could see certain industries shut down, like say steel in the decarbonisation process. But there's a reasonable expectation that the world will transition to green steel. And so the budget is proposing to support industries like that during the transition to green steel in that case, and decarbonisation. And then the other nominated stream is what's called an economic resilience and security stream. And so this relates to potentially, so this relates to sectors that provide essential goods and services to Australia. And so there's a question about how widely that's going to be interpreted. For example, we've seen announcements already on building solar panels. It's not clear that it's essential to do that in Australia. So it's an open question how strict the government is going to be in the application of those principles. Okay, thank you. I'll leave it there and now hand over to my colleague Anthony Kostajak. Thank you.